Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? My name is Kent and the channel is Bitcoin Believer. So it's been a while since I made a video outside, but I want to start doing more content. I want to start making content every day. And what I'd like to do is I've been put up AI videos, which the AI videos are basically my idea, but I just do it through artificial intelligence, which is a lot easier. And then I'd like to start doing live videos from behind my computer. I got to remember what software I used and set that up again. But I want to start doing lives so I can interact with people and talk about what's happening in today's world, because there is so much going on right now that this is really a pivotal time in our world. And things are going to start happening pretty quickly. And we'll talk about that tonight a little bit of what I think is going to happen here in a pretty near future. Because it's not going to keep going the way it's been going. Something is going to break. You know, I kind of think of today's world almost like, you see these YouTube videos where they'll take a motor, an engine, and they'll drop the oil out of it, and then they'll run it wide open, and it'll just smoke and make all kinds of noise, and finally it breaks. You know, either it throws a rod or something else happens with the motor, but then they'll take the motor apart and try to figure out what happened. The motor seizes up. That's just kind of like what we're at right now with the economy. It's like the Fed is really in a hard spot. I mean, obviously they've been raising interest rates, and everybody's been complaining about that. And they can't really raise interest rates too much more. Of course, this last meeting they've had, they kept the rate between the banks the same, but it's going to be really difficult to keep on raising these interest rates because it's just going to make money more expensive. It's going to slow things down, and they can't afford to slow things down, especially with this. They've got a couple wars going on, one in Ukraine and now one in the Middle East with the Palestinians and people in Israel. So they got to keep the economy humming along. They can't afford to shut it down too much more. You drop interest rates, and then you got problems with people that are on fixed incomes. We've got nobody buying the debt right now, which is, I made a video the other day about the way our government raises money is by selling its debt. And nobody buying the U.S. debt right now. We used to have China buying debt. They're not buying debt anymore. We used to have these foreign countries buying our debt, and they're just not buying the debt anymore, because there's too much politics going on in the world. You got Russia backing the Palestinians. You got Russia and the BRICS going on. The BRICS being the other countries that are trying to find another world currency other than the dollar, the BRICS nations. And so you just don't have people buying, the U.S. Treasury debt like they did before. And I know that's true. And the reason I know that's true is because I was in my bank the other day, and I was just sitting in the lobby, just casually listening. And somebody had their door open, and they were trying to persuade these customers to put money into U.S. government Treasury bills. And saying, hey, interest rates are high right now. It's a good time to invest in U.S. debt. It's completely, of course, tax-free. These bonds are really a good deal. And it's funny because I must have had a really bad look on my face because I was like listening to this pitch that they were giving these customers about investing in the U.S. Treasuries. And it's like I must have looked really bad because the guy looked at me and then he went over and he shut the door so I couldn't hear anymore for what they were saying. But I could tell that, he's trying to talk these people into buying, U.S. debt, U.S. Treasury bills. And I was thinking that I wouldn't be buying any U.S. debt right now. I don't think that that would be a good investment, because the reason I don't believe it's a good investment right now is because I think interest rates are probably going to go higher. That's my personal opinion, that interest rates will probably go higher. But locking money in right now at this point without knowing if it's going to go higher or lower is really a bad move. Locking anything in right now is a bad move. Kathy Woods, I don't know, people probably that are Bitcoiners, they know about Kathy Woods. She puts a lot of content out. She's like a Michael Saylor as far as Bitcoin. She's got a deflationary scenario where everything's going down in value. Then you got Michael Saylor and these other people where, hey, we're in a hyperinflation, or there's a lot of people talking about hyperinflation, which is, things just keep going up in value. You can't slow it down. And that could be the scenario we're at, but I don't know which one we're at. It's like the motor that's, on the stand, it's smoking and coughing, and we don't know what's going to break. But something's going to break. It's got to break. We've gone on too long under this current financial structure that we're living under. And just to give a brief history, what happened is after the World Wars, the United States acquired a lot of gold from Europe. They really to kind of keep it from the Germans, the Nazis. It's like you send it over here, and it was in safekeeping in the United States. Plus, the United States was spending a lot of money to fight the World War I, World War II. So the United States gathers a lot of gold. And who has the gold, ends up being the dominant currency of the world. So that ends up being the U.S. dollar. Well, eventually they make the U.S. dollar so it's illegal to own for individuals. So you take it off. So basically, the ordinary everyday person can't hold gold. The only people that can hold gold are the banks. So over the years, they keep on printing money. You've got FDR spending massive amounts of money. Of course, we spent a lot of money in the two world wars. And then, they slowly start to devalue the gold. The gold becomes worth less and less and less. The dollar, they just raise the value of the dollars. Well, the gold, that's the only way they can monetize the currency is they have to devalue the gold, and then they keep raising the amount of money that they print. And they printed this money all the way through the 60s and, almost into the early 70s. And of course, with Johnson and the Vietnam War and the social programs that Johnson established during the 1960s, they printed so much money that eventually Nixon had to take us off the gold standard. So we decoupled the United States dollar with gold. At that point, they could print as much money as they wanted. And at that point, there could have been something fill the void, but Henry Kissinger steps in and he makes a deal with the Saudis. And that deal is, hey, we just use dollars to be able to purchase crude oil, which is the petrodollar. And that's gone on for the last 40, 50 years, since the late 70s, early 70s. So you had 50 years of the petrodollar. Now that's starting to run its course. And they've pretty much tapped that line of thinking. And now a lot of people hate Kissinger. I actually have great admiration for Henry Kissinger, because by doing what he did, by setting up the petrodollar, it really gave my generation, the people that grew up in the United States of America, a huge benefit, because our currencies was something every country had to have if they were going to be used, industrialized with oil, had to be purchased through the dollar. And of course, we built up the military so we could enforce that. Got to trade. If you're going to trade amongst countries trading amongst each other, they need to use the U.S. dollar. That was a pretty strong advantage for the United States. And for my generation, I grew up in the 60s. 60s and 70s is when I was young. Even though things weren't the greatest, they were pretty, probably better than other places in the world. We had a high standard of living. We didn't have any starvation. We didn't have very many homeless people. We had, a pretty good. I was never asked to go to war. So many things, so many benefits that we had as a generation growing up that I actually always, a lot of people hate Henry Kissinger, and I think he's probably, if he's not 100, he's pretty damn close to it, and he's probably not going to be around much longer. But he really bought the United States a lot of time with the petrodollar to be able to, of course, at the same respect, he industrialized the United States by doing that. So when we got on the petrodollar and everybody had to hold dollars, we were able to bring goods from around the world, like China, into this country very inexpensively. And of course, China was happy to do it because that was able to build up their industry. So we lost our industry, but we kept our standard of living. So in one respect, it was good. In another respect, it's bad. That went on till about 2008 and 2009. And really, in my mind, the system completely collapsed in the banking crisis of 2008. And it just so happens that this little idea called Bitcoin come into play just about the same time that the whole system collapses. And the government has to bail out the banks, the government's bailing out the major corporations and everything like that. Be too big to fail was what was going on. But in my mind, the financial system died in 2008. And from 2008 to today, we've been living on borrowed time, or we've just been on death row waiting for the conclusion to the whole thing. It died in 2008, and we've just been on a death march ever since. It's dead, and we're just looking for another alternative way of running the financial system. Of course, the Federal Reserve has been doing this raising and lowering interest rates, and of course the data is behind. I listened to Kathy Woods the other day, and she's really upset with the feds because they keep raising rates, but she says everything's in a deflationary cycle right now. So she said they're not even listening to their own data. So they're supposed to be data driven, but they're not even data driven, and the data driven that they're given isn't even good numbers, and they use the numbers they want to use. So it's just a complete messed up system, completely messed up system, and it's off the rails. It's going to fall apart, and I don't know how it's going to fall apart, but it's going to fall apart very soon. I just hope it's not a very painful thing when it falls apart, because when it falls apart, in my opinion, what they're going to do is they're going to drive us to a digital system. Central bank digital currency, and I put a lot of videos up about the central bank digital currency. I put one up the other day about when we go to a central bank digital currency, you won't have to do a individual tax filing anymore, which is really an antiquated system where we're all responsible for sitting down and doing our 1040 EZ or our 1040 long form, taking all of our deductions. And then you see how that's just such an incredible process. You still got a guy like Donald Trump, billions and billions of dollars, but then when he does a tax return, guess what? He offsets it with all of his expenses, and he really owes no tax, and he never has owed any tax because, of the way the tax system is structured. You're able to offset your expenses or your income with your expenses, and a guy like Trump takes huge advantage of stuff like that. He's got people hired that can figure out every angle that they can possibly figure out. And that's why he never wants to release a tax return. And that's why I think when they did finally get his tax return, they realized he was only paying maybe $500 in taxes. That's just the way the system works. And when they go on a digital banking system, they will get rid of that because digital banks, digital currency, everything's going to be on a public ledger. And they're going to know exactly how much tax you owe because they're going to see what you spent money on. Well, a lot of people don't like that idea. In fact, I get that kickback all the time. We don't want to lose our currency, our money in our pocket. We want to keep the money in our pocket. We don't want a digital currency. It's going to do away with our freedoms, our right to have privacy within our financial system, and that's true. And you're going to give something up for this digital currency. This digital currency is going to give away a lot of freedoms, a lot of ability to, buy what you want to buy, without having the government know what it is you purchased. Like I say, they'll do your taxes for you. You'll just get your bill will be just done automatically because it's already on the blockchain. They just look and see this is what you owe because this is what you spent. There'll be no more Donald Trumps where he just manufactures his own tax returns based on what he wants to pay because of how he's able to offset his income with his expenses. So we're going probably to a digital system, and the reason they're going to go to a digital system is because of that reason. They do want to get into your life. They want to figure out what you're doing. They want to know everything you're doing. Plus, they want to get into your life because they want to know they're going to track money, just like what's going on in the Middle East right now. You've got Hezbollah, and you've got these terrorists that are causing a lot of problems. I heard today or tomorrow or whenever they're sending aircraft carriers over to the Middle East. Well, that is not an inexpensive proposition, sending aircraft carriers to the Middle East, because when you do that, you don't only send one aircraft carrier loaded full of soldiers and airplanes, you send an entire group of people, and you disrupt those people's lives. You send them to another place. They've got to be on a ship. You got all the support people going with them. So, that's an expensive thing to send an aircraft carrier over to the Middle East. So when you do that, you really made a huge commitment. It's very expensive, and our country's been doing that kind of stuff for years and years and years and years and years. They've been the world policemen, and it's cost them so much money, and they've run up such a huge financial debt doing it, trying to enforce people using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency of the world, and now they've got to come up with some alternative system. And in my mind, it's got to be a digital system, because this idea that banks are the only in-between parties with money is just, it's 1950s technology. So it used to be when I was younger, we used to write a lot of checks. You wrote a check, and you wouldn't have to have money necessarily in the bank when you wrote the check, because a few days later the bank would clear the check, and then you would get to float the money for a few days. Well, it's still that way today. I mean, if you're waiting for money to clear, it's floated between two banks for a few days. Guess what? Who gets the advantage of that use of that money? That bank does during that period of time. So that's just not flying in a world where we're communicating. With email, we're communicating around the world in instance. It's instantaneous. We can communicate with anybody in the world. If they have a connection online and we have a connection online, you can communicate with them. And now we have the money system where, that's a few days lagging. It's like you can make a transaction, and then we can communicate it. We can do it. With ChatGPT, we can even, we can do some incredible stuff. But now we got a financial system that's, born out of the 1950s with SWIFT and some of these other ways of moving money around. It just doesn't work. So we're going to a digital system, like it or not. I know a lot of people don't like it. I understand it. I understand why people don't like digital currencies. I understand the loss of freedoms. I understand all this, but I don't know what else they're going to do in order to rescue, our financial system, because we should have had a correction a long time ago. With the amount of money that this country has spent, and I'm in the United States of America, with the amount of money this country has spent, there should have been some time where we had a major some sort of reconciliation. Something had to reconcile. You can't spend billions and billions and trillions of dollars and not have a time where you've got to balance the books, where you got to pay off the loans, you got to pay off the debts. We've been running these deficits forever, and we haven't had a downturn. We haven't had a time where we've had to pay back the money. We haven't had a time where we've had to reconcile it. Now, I understand the idea of what our money is. It's just paper. It's just fiat currency, but it's backed by the full faith and credit of that government. So every one of us owes some of that money, like it or not, because we live under this financial system. We all owe back some of those trillions and trillions of dollars that we borrowed for all these years from China and from all these other countries to run our country and to be the world policeman. We owe that money, and we've never ever paid it back, and we don't have any plans to pay it back, and we can't pay it back. And we are never going to go through a period of time where literally our country has all the money go to, paying back these debts. I don't even know if they can or not. I don't even know if there's a way for that to happen. So there's going to have to be some other system in play that makes this happen. Now, a lot of people do the doom and gloom thing. Well, we'll never pay it back, so we're going to just pay. The country's going to go bankrupt. Everything in this country is basically going to go to zero, because all the money is going to have to be used to pay back your debt. I mean, there's a lot of people that, and then they start pushing the gold and silver thing. Yeah, you got to own gold or silver. If you don't own this precious metal, that's the only thing that's really tangible. The other stuff is not tangible. It's fiat currency. That's never going to happen. That's just really, weird thinking. What they're going to do is they're going to figure out a way to try to absorb all this financial debt into some sort of system. And like I made a video a couple weeks ago about it, what I think they're going to do is they're going to create the digital dollar, central bank digital dollar, and in that digital dollar, some of that, every transaction fee is going to go back to paying back some of this trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. And it's going to streamline the financial industry, so things are going to be cheaper. It's not going to be so expensive to run a bank. The banking, it's not going to be as expensive to do, so it's going to make a big decrease in the cost of banking, because we're going to eliminate that third party, that banking institution. So yeah, there's going to have to be something happen like that. I mean, I knew the financial gig was up when I read a book by G. Edward Griffin called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And I see where G. Edward Griffin's still around. He's got to be an old guy. And that was in the early 90s I read that book. And then of course in 2008 with the banking crisis, that's when you really knew that the game was over with, that something was going to explode sometime in the near future. And it did. It's going to. It still hasn't exploded to the point that it needs to explode for this whole thing to get worked out. And it's going to happen one of these days. It's going to happen probably fairly quickly because we're at a point where the Feds are against the wall. They can't lower interest rates, they can't raise interest rates, and you don't have a very healthy economy, and you're fighting two wars, or actually two wars by proxy. One in Ukraine and one in Israel. So you're fighting those two wars, so you can't have a retraction and you can't have an inability to come up with money because you got Zelensky over here, asking, the Senate, and Biden for a bunch of money. You got sending, like I say, aircraft carriers to Israel full of troops and support ships and, thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of soldiers along with it. And pretty quick, you're probably going to have boots on the ground somewhere in the Middle East. So you got to be prepared for that. So yeah, you got to be able to keep the money machine going. And the only way they're going to keep the money machine going is they got to keep printing money. And they're doing it right now. Back in the day when you had Volcker and he raised the interest rates to like 20%, you didn't have as much debt as you have today. Now you're servicing all that debt. So you keep raising these interest rates and you're servicing trillions of dollars of debt at a higher interest rate. That's why I wouldn't be buying treasury bills right now. So yeah, we got more debt to service. So if you raise the interest rate, the service of the debt gets more expensive. You lower the interest rates, and then they're raising the interest rates to try and slow the economy down. You lower the interest rates, then now you got, you pick things up, but they got all these people on fixed incomes. You got a lot of problems with that, and then you got basically, it's very hard. So, they can't go. It's just, either way they go, it's going to be a problem. So and then plus it's just such an inadequate way of dealing with, the economy. Raise interest rates, lower interest rates, nobody even knows anymore how it's even going to turn out. I mean, that's what they do. They have to test it first. Raise interest rates, and we'll see how the economy responds. Lower the interest rates, we'll see how the economy, and then we'll adjust relative to what happened. So you've got a lag time in what you're doing. It's not working. It's just not working. So we're probably going to go to some digital system here very, very soon. I would say probably within the next 12 months. We're probably going to try to flip over to some digital system. And then at that point, it's hard to tell, how this plays out. I know that, like I say, there's going to be a friction with people trying to go digital. So they'll have to create some sort of problems in our world for us to, to say, hey, rather than go through hardship and times of trouble, we'll just accept your digital currency. Even though we don't like it, and we don't like the fact it's invading our privacy, we don't know anything about it, or where the money's all being exposed to, the government being able to see what we spend it on. There's going to have to be an incentive in place. Probably that incentive that they're going to put in play is the fact that they're going to give you money for that. So everybody's got a FedNow account. So everybody's got a digital account already. They give out a lot of money during the 2020s with the stimulus money. There'll probably be a lot of stimulus money given away in the next few years for us to turn digital. Everybody's going to get a universal basic income. So that's going to be the carrot to get everybody flipped over to a digital currency is you're going to get a little money for doing that, And when people get to a point where they just don't have enough money to take care of their basic needs, that'll be a nice trade-off. Sorry about the trains that come through all the time. So yeah, as soon as people start hurting pretty badly, they know, let's go ahead and flip it over to digital currency, and you'll get a little bit of basic UBI, universal basic income, and then we'll see how that works out. But that's where we're going. We're going to basic UBI. My thing is, I don't know who. And yet, this is the thing. I think the biggest thing, and I've been in this for a long time. People can go back and look at my first videos about cryptocurrencies. It's been a long time I've been in this space. The biggest problem with cryptocurrencies is nobody understands them. I would say a vast majority of people do not understand cryptocurrencies. And they don't want to understand them. It's like, it's like nobody wants to figure it out. Everybody just wants to know, hey, I go down to my bank, I get money out of my bank holds my money, it's safe. I don't have to worry about somebody stealing it. I'm insured by the FDIC, and that's it. I don't have to worry about it. And, I just have my auto bill pay and they just take care of my bills. And nobody wants to flip over to a digital system. And plus everybody likes the idea of, hey, if I got $20 in my pocket and I want to give it to a friend, nobody knows about it. It's like, or like Donald Trump. Hey, I'm spending money on stuff and it's all deductible. I'm sure his jet planes and all his fancy restaurants and golf courses and everything like that is all just a big tax deduction for him. That's why he's not paying any taxes. So, yeah, it's going to be a different system. People are going to have to readjust to it. And like I say, nobody really wants to. Nobody likes change too much. And they really don't like change when it comes to their money. They really don't like it. So, but I think that's going to be what's going to happen. Now, back to digital currencies or cryptocurrencies. Everybody's watched this here recently. I've seen Bitcoin go from about 26,000 to where now Bitcoin is 35,000. It doesn't seem like it's slowing down anytime soon. People are calling Bitcoin at about 150, 200,000. I've never, people that, like I say, I've been in this space for a long time, and most people don't understand it. And the crazy thing is most people don't understand the inception or the genesis or how Bitcoin was developed. And that is the craziest, wildest story that anybody can ever imagine. That we have this inventor of Bitcoin by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who the person is. This guy has to have loud mufflers on his truck to ruin my video. I mean, the loud muffler thing has just gotten to be ridiculous. Either it's a motorcycle, a train, or a loud pickup or truck. So hopefully it backs up here pretty quick as soon as it gets off his cell phone. Come on, dude, just hurry it up. There you go. Put it in reverse. It has to be a Ford, too. Yeah, thank you very much. Go bother somebody else with your mufflers. Okay, so I lost my train of thought now. Yeah, Bitcoin. Who developed Bitcoin? We don't know. So it's like, since we don't know who developed Bitcoin, it's like Bitcoin has no agenda. It's not like something that's Chinese. It's not something that's American. It's not something that's Russian. It's not something that's from the Philippines. It's Bitcoin. We don't know who made it. We don't even know where the person's from. I mean, it's a Japanese name, but we don't even know if the person was Japanese. Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who that person is. And the other crazy thing about it is there are billions of dollars of Bitcoin locked away in wallets. I mean, the biggest wallet owner in Bitcoin is Satoshi, and we don't know who Satoshi is. So there's like this huge sum of money that is pretty much buried somewhere as a backing for Bitcoin, because nothing's ever been moved from that wallet. So yeah, you got billions of dollars in a wallet nobody can touch or has ever been moved. So that's kind of the stable point for Bitcoin. And then we also have something that's very very neutral. It doesn't have anybody that started it or owns it, or it's just So my thinking was Bitcoin something ingeniously thought up by the central governments to invade our privacy, or was Bitcoin really literally a homegrown idea from one person that obviously something happened to that person? Either that person died or no longer is alive, because I'm sure if that person was alive, everybody needs resources, that they would have tapped into some of those billions of dollars of Bitcoin that are stashed away in that Satoshi account. So this is a crazy, crazy thing. We don't know what the genesis of it. And the genesis of it just happens to be right when the financial system died in 2008. So when the financial system just died and went away, we come up with this ingenious idea of having a digital currency that operates online seamlessly and is pretty much, been tested for the last 20 years as far as its ability to survive, almost 20 years, not quite, but it's been around since 2008, and nobody's brought it down. No country's brought it down. No terrorists have brought it down. Nobody's brought it down. So it has worked for almost 20 years, and there's a huge sum of money that the founder has set to the side that nobody can touch. That is kind of like this stability point for it. So it's never going to zero because somebody owns a bunch of Bitcoin that nobody's, it's always going to be worth something. Plus there's only a fixed number of those things, 21 million, and the rewards keep decreasing. They're going to decrease here in the next few months. In the next 4 or 5 months, it's going to decrease again with the halving. So this is like an ingenious idea. And it may rescue us from, what we've done for these past 150 years with these fiat currencies, where we've just made them out of thin air to the point where they become pretty much valueless. Where, now, it used to be when I was growing up, if someone had $1 million, they were pretty much set. Now $1 million isn't that much money. I remember when I was young, we go to the grocery store. My mom would buy groceries for the family with $20. Now you go to the grocery store and you're lucky if you don't spend $200. I used to fill a tank of gas when first year I went to college back in Nebraska. I remember leaving the farm and going to college at Hastings, Nebraska, Hastings College. And I remember I went to the gas station because I'd always got my gas off the farm, because my parents had bulk fuel from the farm, so I never had to pay for it. I just pull up to the big gas tank that we filled the tractors and trucks from and just load it up. And of course I was driving a Dodge Charger, wasn't exactly the most fuel efficient car in the world. And I remember I went off to college, and I remember the first time I had to buy gas for myself, and it was 65 cents a gallon. And this is 1978 or 78, it'd be 78 or 79. Whenever I went to college the first year. So it was like 65 cents a gallon. And now what are we at? We're at $5 a gallon, $6 a gallon, $7 a gallon. Look at how much things have. That's the reason. That's the reason that gas used to be 65 cents, and now that it's $5 or $6 is because of the fact that we just printed so much money, and everything's gotten more expensive. I used to talk to my grandmother on my mom's side. And I remember asking her, because, she had come through the Depression. And I remember talking to her when I got a little bit older. And I said, were things tough back then? Would you guys have a hard time making it through this? She said, no. And she was really telling me, no, in fact, she thought those hard times, going through the 20s and 30s were easier than they were right before she passed away. Because she said, when she was younger, things were inexpensive. You could buy a dress for a few dollars. You could buy, go to the grocery store for $4 or $5. And as times went by and my grandparents got older, they had a hard time keeping up with expenses. It was during the 70s and 80s, and they had, my grandfather had a little pension from, he worked for the sugar factory back in Nebraska. So he had a little pension, and when the inflation hit in the 70s, his pension was basically valueless. And so I remember him telling me, wow, they would rather gone through the 30s and 40s and 20s than the 1970s because of the fact that the money got so valueless during those periods. And that's what's happened. We're literally coming into a time where anybody young growing up in this world can't accumulate much because everything's gotten so expensive. When you're paying, where I'm living down here along the coast in California, $2,000 to $3,000 a month for a little apartment, you got to make $30,000 a year just to pay your rent, And I see where the UAW settled some of their agreements, and I figured out they're making about $40 an hour, about $50,000, $60,000 a year. Well, that's great. They just got through going on strike, and now they're going to make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. Well, just guess what? That's a basic minimum amount of money to live on in this world today. is maybe $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And if you're paying taxes, that's really kind of a sad living. That's a very difficult living. So where do you go from here? You can't just keep raising prices on everything. Can't just keep on printing money, and then expect. You got trade union problems now. Keep on raising prices and keep on printing money. Print all the money for the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, and you print another couple trillion, $4 or $5 trillion. You just quantitative easing, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Everything gets more expensive. You get to the point where people just can't make it anymore. They give up. And you're already seeing that in the labor market where people just decide not to work because working doesn't get you anywhere. It just barely paid the next bill. So they're going to have to come up with something, and it's going to have to be something where they're going to have to give people back money for all the money that they printed. So you're going to have to, you're going to have to get money in return for all the past overspending that's been done. I remember I've used to listen to people argue, and they always said, well, we're borrowing against our children's future, and they were right when they said that. When this country was, or any country was borrowing billions and billions and trillions of dollars, they're borrowing against their children's future, and that's exactly what's going on today. We're there now. This is the children's future. Now they're having to pay the price for all of this massive overspending. So what do you have to do? You're going to have to come in and you're going to have to change the system. And the only way you can change the system is you're going to have to figure out a way for people to exist, to pay their basic minimum needs. And the only way to do that is you're going to have to give some of that money back. You're going to have to give that money back through some sort of digital system. So I want to start talking about this kind of stuff, and I want to do it in a group of people. Like I'll do a live, and people can join the live, and we'll just talk about this kind of stuff, and we'll talk about what's going on. The other thing I want to talk about real quickly tonight is the FTX thing. So you have Bankman-Fried, who got convicted of all these financial frauds. I mean, everything, he got convicted of everything. And I listened to some of the videos. I never was a Bankman-Fried guy. He just never come off very well to me. I didn't buy the big fluffy hair and the flip flops, and I'm a nerdy computer guy, and I'm really smart. I never got into him, never got into any of his stuff, never put any money in FTX. But anyway, he's gotten some serious time now. Is probably going to be sentencing him here pretty quick. I was just wondering, for the people that are still around here from the EOS days, I wonder if the founders of EOS were watching that trial very closely, because there are liabilities and responsibilities yet for that whole thing. EOS is still trading. It still trades on Coinbase, and of course the ENF is still running it, so they're keeping it going. But there was a lot of what would you say? There were a lot of broken promises there, and you could see what happened with. I mean, obviously Bankman-Fried was a lot more egregious with what he did, but there were a lot of problems with what was happening there with EOS too. So I just wondered if those guys are watching that very closely, that were in part of that. Part of me wants, now I know why I spent all that money settling with the Security Exchange Commission. So we'll see. I know there's a lawsuit going on. I don't know where it's at. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that was a pretty bad deal too. And you can see that. If you're going to be a fiduciary, if you're going to be taking in people's money, you better be a little bit honest about it and not just come up with a bunch of pie in the sky stuff. So anyway, very interesting. He's probably going to go to prison for a long, long time, and we'll just see. And in a way, I think that's a thing that kind of needed to take place. There needed to be some accountability, and if it all gets pinned on this one guy, by sending him to prison for the rest of his life. He's a young man. I think he's in his early 30s. And a few of the other people, his girlfriend and a few of the other people he was with, they all get sent to prison over FTX. And then now we can say, hey, they were the bad guys. We put them in prison, and now, we cleaned it up or regulated it, and now it's going to be an honest way of going. Maybe that was the whole purpose of it. But anyway, I like to get on with a few people and just talk about this kind of stuff, because there's a politics, there's economics, there's people's lives, there's stories. There's just a lot of things that all encompassed here. So I appreciate you watching. Thank you.